the Reconstructionist Radio Podcast Network presents Worldview Media Podcast, where Gordon and Joyce Runyon view popular media through the lens of the biblical five-point covenant model to help believers appreciate and apply principles of exciting narrative and engaging storytelling.
Coming to you live from our recording studio inside our very spacious English manor house. It's the Worldview Media Podcast, starring Joyce Runyon.
Wow, I gotta roll.
And I am her sidekick, Gordon Runyon. This is the Worldview Media Podcast. And we are here today to do a little bit of a discussion on a movie called The Crooked House.
Just Crooked House.
It's just Crooked House.
Yeah, there's no the.
No definite article. This movie we watched on Amazon Prime, and it is an Agatha Christie.
It's based off of a book.
Agatha Christie mystery adapted to the cinema.
Yes.
Now this mystery story takes place in England, and there is this large manor house that is, what would you say, morally crooked or psychologically crooked?
There's a lot of problems in the house, I think.
Yeah, but it's not the house itself. It's the family that lives there.
Yeah.
And so the old man, the patriarch of the family, an extremely wealthy family, has been poisoned and...
Well, he has died. Now, somebody thinks he's been poisoned and contacts the detective, and then lo and behold, he was poisoned.
Right.
And the whole family is suspect. What a family, huh?
Yeah, they are a crazy cast of characters. We won't even try to go through them. There are a ton of suspects in this movie.
Yeah.
And what's the name of our hero, the detective?
Charles Hayward.
Charles Hayward. He's working as a private investigator. Mm-hmm. And I think we're led to believe that he's barely scraping by economically.
Well, he doesn't look so great for his office.
Right. And his secretary is kind of giving him a ration.
Yeah. Well, sometimes that's your job.
Right. And so he goes to work to try to discover who poisoned the old man. And the suspects are all family members.
Yeah, pretty much.
And
well, they don't have much staff, so
yeah, that's true. I guess there's a nanny and a
cook that we never meet,
and a tutor, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Well, basically, it winds up any of these people in the house could have done it and might have done it.
Yeah, one of the daughter-in-laws has a degree in poisons.
Yeah, she's an expert in poisons.
Yeah.
And so these sorts of things abound, and it's not just that they all have motive and that they all have opportunity and they all have things that they might benefit by if the old man was dead, but really they're all wicked people, really. They're all evil, they're amoral, they really have no moral compasses between them. And
I don't know, Lady Edith, is that
the aunt?
Yeah, she seems...
Well, she's the most stable of them.
But she's still,
she was still suspicious at points.
She is.
I thought.
So she's kind of like, well, I don't know. She's an old gal. She maybe got tired of something.
Right. And so there's a little bit of a love interest in there too. For anybody that's concerned about it, there's no sex. There's very little violence. Could you even really call it violence? I'm not sure you could.
No, I don't think there was really much of that.
There's no cuss words.
Yeah, and I think it's a PG rating.
I'm not sure why it would be, unless it was just because the subject matter was kind of
a little bit
psychologically dark at times.
Yeah.
What did you like about the movie? Were there things that you liked about it? Well, that tells you what kind of movie.
I'm just thinking, it's, normally I like foreign type things. This is in England. It's a time set one. So what, it's like the 40s maybe?
Yeah.
And it is a big grand house, and the costuming is good. It's just that it seemed really slow.
Yeah.
And a lot of the filming it just wasn't well lit.
Right, it was very dark.
It was
physically dark.
Yeah, it was hard to see a lot of what was going on sometimes on the screen. And the characters, there was a lot of characters, so it's really hard to have a lot of character development in this.
Right.
A book is probably different because it's going to take more time and you're going to get more backstories and you're going to know a little bit more. I thought the sets were really nice. I thought the costuming was pretty good. There's
I
different.
felt like the production value was good all around. Yeah.
But it was just really slow.
Yeah.
And maybe I was just really tired too.
Right. Both of us were falling asleep.
I was having to really concentrate and pay attention, and that could have just been myself. Maybe somebody else wouldn't have those problems.
Well, I'll tell you what. I think we hit 2 bad movies in a row because I didn't like this movie. It does have a couple of things that it did well. Mm-hmm. And without spoiling the plot, I will just admit that it swerved
Big surprise.
me.
You said, what?
I got swerved. I admit I didn't see the killer coming.
Yeah.
And in fact, right up until they revealed it,
you were like,
I was on the wrong one.
Oh.
So it did swerve me, and I got to give it credit for that. Mm-hmm. Once, how the mysteries go, that once the killer is revealed, then you can kind of go back through and see how,
this was this, and then they knew
if
about
the mystery
that,
is done right, you can see how the pieces fall into place.
Yeah.
And so I got to give it credit that way. But that was maybe more Agatha Christie than it was this movie. Agatha Christie swerved me here.
Yeah.
And,
and I don't know how close the book is to what we saw.
Right.
That's the other thing, because I haven't read that.
So. Well, neither have I, but I think I have to say, you mentioned that probably there were elements of the story that worked better in a book than they did in the movie. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of the main thing that I walked away with. I kind of walked away thinking, I bet this, if this movie was faithful to the book, I bet this was a really good mystery story to read. But I didn't think it was a good movie. It's so slow.
We've seen another Agatha Christie movie.
Right, we saw Murder on the Orient Express.
And that was another one that was kind of...
It was slow, but it wasn't this slow.
Well...
And it wasn't this dark.
It's the English way of being slow.
I gotcha. But you're right about that. But the pacing I didn't think was good. And like you say, I'm sure the physical darkness of the set was meant at points to be metaphorical and symbolic.
Have a deeper meaning and to give you an eerie, it's this nice house and it should
I'm 51. My eyes don't work that well to begin with. And sometimes it was just hard for me to watch it and keep track of what was going on.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, there's a huge cast of suspects. Mm-hmm. And sometimes
the whole family lives here. Anybody
multiple
who's
generations and cousins.
And part of this family is in this big house. So it's,
Yeah, it was really hard for me to keep track of sometimes, especially when you have like 2 characters in a scene and they're talking about other characters who aren't there and they're just talking about them by name.
You're like,
And sometimes that was hard for me to think,
Yeah.
which one is she? Is she the crazy one in this way, or is
the
she
wife,
crazy in
or
this
is
other
she
way?
the one that's married to the one that everybody loves, or is she
Right.
married to the one that nobody cares about? And,
Right. And so I would say that was mostly not enjoyable for me.
Yeah.
When it began, I liked the main character pretty well.
the detective.
Yeah, I thought he was going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you get this sense early on that he has some daddy issues. He's trying to live up to a reputation of his father or something, where you don't know what the connection is. But there's some kind of tension or conflict between him and his father. And that was the other thing that I didn't really like, is that although they hit that note several times during the movie,
Never really developed.
never resolved,
Yeah.
and in fact never really explained.
Yeah.
You know, and so that was a story arc that didn't arc.
Yeah.
Didn't spark, didn't do nothing. And so my whole thought was, if you're a mystery reader, to me, I think that, from what I understand, because I'm not a big murder mystery fan, but people who are really into reading murder mysteries, part of the fun of it is that it's like setting them inside like a puzzle room or an escape room, and
Trying to figure out and do
it's
all
a
the
big
clues
puzzle,
and,
and can you catch the clues as they come by? And so my feeling was this probably was a really good version of that in the book, but it just didn't adapt well to a movie. That was my thinking. So
well, it was slow.
It would be hard for me to recommend it to anybody. I don't think I could give it a
And it was a
C.
long
It's-
movie too.
Right.
You know,
it's
I was
long
hoping
and
it would be
slow.
not quite so long.
So I think I gave out a D last week, and here's another one. I don't think this was very good.
Well, I probably won't watch it again. And I don't think it makes me want to watch, grab the book and read it
right.
either. But if you like murder mysteries, you might like this. You know, if
or you
that's
probably like the book better.
Well, books are always better. Can't get away from that.
Oh, no way.
Yes.
No way.
Books are always better.
No.
What?
I'm a fan of books, but some things you just got to see. You wouldn't want to read a Avengers Infinity War novel. I mean, you got to see that.
They're not going to write that. That's a script.
If it was, though, you'd want to...
It'd be a comic book. That's what it would be. And
It already has been.
You wouldn't be reading it in a word-by-word thing. So there are different genres that work better for different types of...
Absolutely.
Is it a mystery? Is it an action-packed thing? You know, those things, they translate better in different mediums. So, but it was okay.
Really?
It was okay.
I'm at less than okay.
Yeah, I can tell.
I kind of wish I hadn't
Seen it.
Well,
I think this worked out better than the other one we were thinking about. We started that and said, oh, maybe we should
What was that other one we were going to do?
I don't even remember. It was supposed to be based on a true story, but it just started off a little too dicey, so we just said, we're going to call this Pull the Plug.
Right. Some places not even the Worldview Media team dares to tread.
Yeah. Well.
All right. You done with this portion? You ready to start talking worldview stuff?
Are you done with this portion?
And I'm done.
You're so done. Well, we can't. What's hard is that we made an agreement not to tell you everything in case.
The only good part about the movie is the solution.
Is the ending.
Right. And we can't give that away.
That's what he tells me, so. All right. Then.
However, my hint is...
No hints.
Yeah.
If you can't do it, no.
I'm giving a hint.
No.
It's so obscure, nobody will get it.
Then don't do it.
All right. You're giving me that mom look. I can't do it. All right. Hit me up on Facebook. I'll give you a hint. All right. Let's take our break and we'll come back and talk worldview issues. There are some. So that'll be interesting.
Are you interested in Christian education? Would you like to learn how to be a Christian teacher or how to run your very own Christian school with success? The GCS Apprenticeship Program can help. Learn more on our website at gcsapprenticeship.com.
The Reconstructionist Radio Podcast Network brings to you a complete lineup of podcasts where you will hear practical and tactical theology. Our desire is not simply that you consume our shows, but that you also live out your faith in every area of life. We can talk all day long about these things, but if we fail to put them into practice, then we fail as ambassadors of Jesus Christ our King. Subscribe now to your favorite Reconstructionist Radio Podcast Network shows, or you can subscribe to the Reconstructionist Radio Master Feed, where all of the content we produce, including the audiobooks and audio articles, will pop up as soon as they are available. And don't forget to visit reconstructionistradio.com to volunteer as a narrator or to partner with this ministry financially. May the Holy Spirit stir you into action for Christ and His kingdom.
And we're back, Worldview Media Podcast, part of the Reconstructionist Radio Podcast Network, your one-stop shop for all your dominionizing needs.
Woohoo!
Woohoo!
All right.
And we're done. No.
Thanks, guys.
This is the worldview discussion portion of the podcast where we talk about what is being preached to us. You know, I don't know if you know this, Mom. Every media bit that we receive is preaching something to us.
Well, it definitely has a message.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we need to learn how to discern what that is.
Yeah. Well, let me say, at this moment, on our last podcast, I was just really kind of disgusted.
You were hard.
I was hard. I was upset. I wasn't happy. And I think I may have made a comment just saying that people are stupid.
Well, they are.
And for the most part, I'll stick by that. But I would want to say that especially when it comes to watching things, if we're watching a movie or we're watching a sitcom or whatever we're doing, we're there to be entertained. And you don't really want to have to think too hard because people just don't do that. And if you do that to them, they'll turn it off. They'll go somewhere else. I guess I'll go get me some food, something to drink. Time to run to the bathroom. I won't wait for the commercial. And so you kind of have to, not be so hard on your viewers. I mean, you can get a message across without having to be too evasive about what that message is. So,
well, I think your point was just that in a movie where all the people making it are confessing Christians and wanting to extend the kingdom of Christ out into the media, which is a good thing, and we applaud that, and we want to see more of it. But as we do that, we are going to stumble along the way and stuff like that. And we need to be able to learn from our mistakes and all that.
Yes. And
I think your issue was just that a Christian movie is going to, as Christians, we're going to look at it a little bit differently. And maybe we'll look at it a little bit more critically because we know what the ultimate message is that they're going to try to get across.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, or we at least know in what ballpark that message is going to be.
Maybe.
And so it's hard when we either see that message being preached in a manner that's too vague or in a manner that's really kind of too on the nose and not very realistic and kind of cheesy.
Yeah. And usually it's cheesy.
Yeah, usually. So, I know we probably sounded like we were pretty hard on the River Thief.
Well, maybe one of us did.
You were harder on it than me, but...
But, You have to take that into consideration with your audience at all times.
You honestly went into that movie really not knowing who it was coming from or what it was supposed to be.
I figured it was a low-budget movie.
Yeah.
That somebody had said, hey, let's look at this.
Right, but you didn't have any expectations at all about it, though, in terms of what it was going to try to do.
No, I didn't. I just figured it was low budget, and it was getting ready for a ride.
Yeah, but we've seen some of that was not terrible, though.
Yeah.
Some movies that maybe did things a little bit better in some areas.
So, well, that was just a clarification on my part, because I was like,
you really do think everybody is stupid.
I think the potential is there at all times, and some people step into it very freely.
The T in the Calvinistic tulip is total stupidity.
Well, it goes along with depravity.
It sure does. It sure does.
Got to be pretty stupid to be completely depraved.
So what are we talking about? We are talking about
Crooked House.
The Crooked House.
No,
we were talking about Crooked House.
Yes.
Man, that's hard for me to do.
I know.
All right, so in this movie, there are some kind of thematic things that can be picked out, I think.
Okay. What'd you pick out?
I thought one recurring note was kind of total depravity, and it was really kind of a study in depravity. And actually, I think a lot of the time that can make for some really good drama. Mm-hmm. The whole series, Breaking Bad, which many people would put up in the top 3 or 5 series ever made.
Ever made?
Yeah, Breaking Bad was really good. And if you had to pick out a theme, it's kind of total depravity. And how if you leave people alone to their own devices and to...
They usually do bad things.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I just had a discussion with a guy not too long ago when I pointed out that I was had become disillusioned and disappointed with The Walking Dead and wasn't watching it anymore. Because all the hope had been taken out of it. It was a hopeless thing, and we just kept running into, now there's this group of bad guys, and now this group of bad guys, and it wasn't going anywhere, and it was just very repetitive. And he countered that and said, well, it's a study in total depravity, and what happens to a society when there is no knowledge of God, and there's no real standard, no dependency on the law of God, and that's what it is, and it is dark and it is hopeless because there's no reason for hope if you've gotten rid of God, and so he was trying to defend that there really was a redeeming theme going through there, and so I guess I can see that, but I think,
but still, as an audience, as a viewer, you have to see what you're doing to your people that are watching.
Yeah. And
are you going to want to watch? I mean, you've had a long day. It was a bad day. People got mad at you at work, and you feel terrible anyway. Nobody made you any dinner. And then you sit down to watch this program that you really enjoy, and it just makes your day worse.
Right.
So, what is it you're trying to do to your viewers? So think about that.
Well, and so Crooked House kind of does this. The manor house itself winds up being kind of a sociological experiment. To my mind, it becomes kind of like this fishbowl. And you have these different breeds of fish, and they are the only ones that they deal with, and there's really no rules there. At one point, one character is talking about what it's like to have so much money that he doesn't have to work, and he kind of says something, well, why would I yes, I hate it in here, but why would I want to have to go work for a living somewhere? And
yeah,
very much the same as our kind of main complaint about things like the welfare system, where if you just give people what they need in order to live and survive and be mildly comfortable, and they don't have to work for it.
There's no reason that they would ever want to leave that situation.
Yeah, and it's very morally corrupting in all areas. And so I think we normally think about that kind of thing having to do with the poor, the entitled poor. But in this movie, it was the rich who, because they were rich, were in that same situation where there was no need or no desire. There was no point in trying to redeem the time, so to speak. There was none of them had any real goals, and other than just fulfilling their own lusts.
Yeah.
And so there was something interesting in that, and it was crooked.
Yeah.
And for the fact that the creators understood that and kind of emphasized the crookedness of it. That here are these people whose riches really have corrupted them in a variety of different ways.
Yeah.
And they've all come to the point where at the end of the movie, if you had to pick who the killer was, it could have legitimately been any of them.
Yeah. Well, and that this is a family that's living in one huge place, and they're very disconnected from each other. Nobody does anything with the other people, even with the children.
Right.
The parents are really disconnected from them. They don't seem to interact with any of them, and they've got a range of ages. One's probably like in her 20s, probably one's a teenage boy, and then one's maybe 8 to 10 years old. Yeah,
there's 3 generations in there.
Well, but for the one family that has the 3 kids, all 3 kids belong to that one couple. And you never see them even interact with their kids. Everybody's off on their own. And there are two characters that don't seem quite as weird. They seem anomalies in this family, and that's Sophia, the girl that goes out and says
she hires the detective.
Think my grandpa's been killed. And then the elderly aunt who has been around from the beginning and seen how evil the grandpa was in controlling everything. And so he has controlled everything for his children, for his grandchildren, for anybody he comes in contact with. And so these 2 characters don't really fit in with everybody else because they just seem a little bit more normal, maybe.
Yeah.
More regular. And so that's a little bit strange to me because the girl had the same parents as the other 2 children who, they don't interact with anybody. So I don't know. It's just really weird.
Yeah, it was a strange situation for sure. You mentioned the old man that died. The constant complaint about him was how controlling he was and manipulative. And he was obviously a very type A personality. And being the go-getter and the really assertive type, that's what helped him amass this fortune. But there's probably a worldview lesson in there about how resentful his whole family was about the fact that he took all this aggression and control and authoritarianism that it took to build this business empire, that he dealt with his family in the exact same way. And that, the Bible says specifically to fathers that they should avoid exasperating their children. And here's a man who capitalized on exasperating his children, and to the point they were all happy to see him go. And might have all done it themselves.
But they weren't so unhappy that they decided to leave.
Right.
So
because their idol had been their wealth, and they hated their father. He was kind of a god figure over that household. They hated him, but they liked what he was providing them with. And
well, and I think ultimately too, there were really no consequences for anybody's behavior. And you see that in not the oldest son, but the one that had run the business, and he had run it into the ground several times, and the father just gave him more money to fix it. And so
Right.
he never became, and that's as an adult. And I think you see that kind of same disconnect with the couple that had the children, that they didn't know what the kids were doing. They weren't involved with the kids. They weren't doing, anything with them. So there was no care. There was no guidance. There were no rules.
Yeah.
There was no boundaries. You could do whatever you want as long as you wanted.
Right. And I think that's something that I appreciate about the way this was written, because the story depends on having this house full of maniacs, potentially psychotic people who hated the man at the top. And the psychology of the writer, I'm assuming that was Agatha Christie, it was correct. It was biblical. I mean, if you are this kind of person with your family, you probably will engender these kinds of reactions.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I noticed is, just studying history and stuff, that one of the dangers that that historically attends people who are used to a lot of comfort and opulence and wealth, there are certain sins that become kind of peculiar to that group of people, and there are some sins that you're just not going to find as much of in a culture that's struggling to survive. And there's something about being comfortable and having everything handed to you that does breed a certain flavor of sins.
Excess. Yeah.
And I felt like on some level, the creators of the show understood that. And so I felt like the psychology of the father and all the potential suspects and murderers, all that was kind of consistent with the world God made, that this really is how this works.
Yeah.
And so I appreciated that aspect of it, at least. Because a lot of what you run into today, you find, like in cop shows and stuff, you'll find basically writers creating psychoses out of whole cloth. They just come up with their own. This is the motive why this person acted like that, and you're like, what? And well, yeah, nobody's ever acted like this in the past, and this has never been the reason, but it is in this show.
Yeah.
And I understand why that happens, but it's refreshing to see somebody who understood human nature enough and understood the real world enough to write something consistent with that.
Yeah. I think that's correct.
All right. Anything else occur to you?
Well, like you say, I think I talked about just having no consequences and no guidance. And I think I've told you before, the dysfunction we grow up with is the one that we consider normal. And so I think you see that repeated in a way and there's only the one couple that has children. I don't know if the other people didn't ever want kids, couldn't have them. I don't know what their deal was, but there was only, and that's kind of different too. But only one of the brothers had children. And where the dad, his father, the grandfather, had been so over controlling, then the other guy was just like completely hands off with his kids.
Right.
Is what it appeared like.
Not in their lives at all.
So it was just, and I don't know, sometimes when you grow up in one extreme, in your effort to not continue that extreme, you do another extreme, and it's just not as good either.
Yeah. It's easy for the pendulum to swing too far.
Yep. You say, well, I'm never going to do what my dad
right.
did.
That's right.
I'm never going to be that person. Okay, but then you're this person who isn't really much better than that other person that you're trying to be.
So you say normal is really just the dysfunction that you are used to.
Well, I think it is. I don't think there's any family that is not dysfunctional in some capacity because we're fallen people.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of the problem when people get married is like, your family is crazy. And the other person's saying, oh no, your family is crazy.
Right.
And the truth is, it's all of us. We're all crazy.
For sure. All right. Very good. Well, I think that's about it for us.
Since we can't say anything more.
No.
Which is sad because I think there's stuff there, but. All right, then.
We have to wrap this up, Ma.
All right, gotta move. See you later. Bye.
So go out there. We've got listeners who are creative people, game designers and authors and mentors and teachers. And wow.
That's surprising.
It's shocking, really.
I don't believe it.
No, I've seen the numbers. We have...
Tens upon tens. Thanks, Jordan.
A multitude of dozens. Anyway, what was I going to say?
Bye.
You need to figure out. I was going to say goodbye. Just encourage you to think of the arts and creative work as another area in which to bring the kingdom and preach Christ. So let's do that.
Sure.
All right. So next week, y'all. God bless you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Worldview Media Podcast. Please visit reconstructionistradio.com to check out the other podcasts in our network and to download our free audiobooks.